Our world is inherently disruptive. Change and challenges are part of our societal fabric. Turbulence is a given. In these trying times, we all need to feel anchored and understood. It's never been more important to nurture an awareness of self and carefully navigate what is in our control, to communicate clearly and to manage our relationships adeptly. Introducing Stewart Rogers, Executive Leadership and Coaching. It's an invaluable anchor for the everyday. It's built on insights and acumen and an honest, solutions-driven approach to personal and professional growth. So if you're looking to streamline your career trajectory, to develop leadership potential or improve your people skills, learn to control your emotions, the work starts right now. And it starts right here. Perhaps you're at a crossroads or grappling with uncertainty. Your next big step is a whole lot closer than you think. Stewart, let's start with this. Tell us a little bit about the role of an executive coach today. What's the most important steer you can give your clients when all of these challenges that I mentioned abound?
I'd say that the first thing is you need to be aware of how you're coming across to people, what you're saying and doing. So your behavior, you need to be aware of it, and you need to maintain control of your emotions, because emotional volatility is the first sign of that you're out of control. And the next thing is no defense, no excuses. People just want to see your results. They don't want to know your reasons why you didn't do something. They want to know how you're going to fix it and what are your results.
And it's inherent in human nature
Yes.
that you're going to default to a defensive position.
Absolutely.
It's actually not easy to get that right, is it?
Yeah, well, just to give you an idea, when we start off with coaching, I always say to a client, no defense and no excuse. And I say to them, when you do defend an excuse, I'm going to stop you and I'm going to appear rude and you're going to get upset with me. But you must listen to me and stop. And I can tell you that it's a battle for the first couple of sessions. I have to literally put my hand in front of them and say to them, no defense. And no, but yes, yeah, but Stewart, I need to tell you, the reason is, but it wasn't quite what, and I don't want to know.
I guess one of the other attributes of a good leader is to ask more questions
Yes.
of people, not to be prescriptive all the time.
Yes, one of the things that we do in life is we tend to make decisions for other people, and particularly leaders. And so that is how we create thinking people. And a lot of times we are not helping people in our teams to think for themselves.
Tell me this, do leaders need to be liked?
So I do not believe that you should try to be liked, because being liked means that you're bending over backwards to make people happy.
But it's human nature.
But the first thing I drum into people is that it's not about being liked, it's about being respected. So create the boundaries. Do not be over familiar. Don't allow a blurring of boundaries. If people don't do something, you say, this is unacceptable. And then you ask the question. I always tell people that the only way to get people to think is to say, and what are you going to do differently to make sure this does not happen again? And then you take a pause.
Critical in this whole process, Stewart, I would imagine for a leader, in order to be successful, is to be driven by and to stick to deadlines. Not always easy. Why is that important?
Well, deadlines are part of boundaries. Okay, and you can't follow up on something if you didn't put a deadline, because you don't know when it's supposed to be due. And people are naturally inclined to, if you don't give a deadline, they'll just wait for you to ask for it. So in fact, it might get forgotten, or they just won't get round to it, or when you do ask them, they'll do it quickly and not so well. So I say a deadline is extremely important, but the deadline isn't just the only important thing. The follow-up and the follow-through is important. So if you set deadlines religiously, but then people miss the deadlines and nothing's done about it, then people are going to always blur that boundary. But if you set deadlines and you say it's unacceptable, when someone does miss the deadline, people know that you're not accepting that they don't meet that deadline.
All right, that's the background then to
That
what you do. Now let's talk about your specific focus, which is executive coaching and leadership. And I'm going to imagine that this is important because the higher you get to the apex, the lonelier it becomes.
It does. And this is the thing that a coach helps you to be. It helps you to have somebody with you on the journey. Some of my coaching relationships are long-term, quite a few of them in fact, with senior executives. A lot of times leaders do not have someone to run a decision past. They have to look like they know what they're doing. And therefore, a coach is important because you provide that ear, that listening post for the people.
Is that what you mean when you say that you assist people in navigating through complexity?
Correct. So remember, we don't know what we don't know. So we cannot see what we cannot see. Someone outside watching you can see what you're doing that you could improve on, or can see what you're doing well, and they will give you straight and honest feedback. So coach is the person who's going to give you the direct feedback. Friends are maybe going to tell you what you want to hear. A coach is going to give you the honest, straightforward, what you need to change.
I want to talk in just a moment about fear, because that's the thing that drives all of us, and the higher up the ladder you get, the more fearful the whole process becomes. But in order to be a good leader, you have natural attributes anyway. How do you help people maximize those strengths?
Firstly, I like to do a 360 appraisal before I coach people, or I interview people around them, in order to find out more about the person's style and how they work with the people. In fact, I asked the person who's going to be coached to identify people that I need to interview, because that's important to me, that he or she knows who I'm going to ask. The most important thing there is that I then understand more about the person, and if it's a confidential survey, people are going to give the honest information. I share it with the person and say, so this is how other people see you. And then when they bring me actual examples, or they talk about what they're struggling with, maybe dealing with a bully or a difficult person in the workplace, I can then help them to understand what they need to do differently in order to make an impact and get what they want out of that person.
Fear of failure, you'll tell me, I guess, is an inhibitor of growth.
It is, absolutely. I mean, it is one of the most common things that I come across. People who are really capable are just incapable at certain times because they're just crippled with fear. So what we normally talk about is what is within our control and what is outside our control. So we look at why are you afraid, and then we look at the rationality of that. And it sounds stupid because in fact we are quite rational. So when we have fear, we sort of know that the fear is unfounded. But when you lay it out and you talk about it, you can say, what is the likelihood of that happening? And you know that the statistics show that about over 90% of the things we fear never happen. So it's actually 98% in some surveys that were done by some universities in America. But the thing that you need to do is you need to look at, is this serving me or is it not serving me? And to have that fear, it's inhibiting me. So I also love that Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway book, because it's about the only way to overcome fear is to actually get and do it. So I support them into setting a plan or an action or a goal to force them into a situation, even to do the thing, but I help them to feel comfortable, as comfortable as possible with what they need to do.
Spoken to me. I want to talk about your coaching style now. So you've spoken about the 360 start, but the way in which you do it, and this is important. You say you have a participative style of coaching and a very relaxed manner, much in the way in which you and I are talking now. Okay. How does that work?
If you go and look on my website, people that I've coached say he's very direct. So I'm very direct, but we have a relaxed and participative style. However, what's important to me is that the person is able to think and express themselves and find the answer within them. Because mostly they're able to find it, but I need to then ask the right questions. So participative in that, I don't tell people what to do. I ask them questions until they find the best way, or we agree together on what the way forward is.
And agreeing on the way forward, obviously you're going to set some goals and desired outcomes.
Specifically, yes. And once you've set a goal, and then you set actions so the goal could be for the whole session, the whole coaching process, or the goal could just be for a particular session. But the actions that we put in place, I hold the people to those actions. And in fact, sometimes after actions are not met, I ask people, how important is this coaching to you?
With the understanding that there is no one-size-fits-all solution.
There is not, because everyone is different. And that's why when people say to me, how long will the coaching process be? I say to them, well, let's get to talk about what you need and understand, and then we can look at how long it needs to be. But the real problem is that everybody is different. So I like to understand the person fully. That's why I do the 360. That's why the first session is normally a 2-hour session in which I get them to tell me everything about themselves. Because, of course, it's a confidential environment. But, of course, in the first session, they can't, the trust is not completely there. But in the end, with the questions that I ask, they get to tell me lovely background. So I can understand the person behind the person, the environment that they come from, the environment they're currently in, and some of the fears or stresses they're working with. So it's about the whole person.
Very quickly, what's the difference between mentorship and life coaching?
Okay, so a life coach is someone who helps you to set goals and for growth and development, and then takes you through a process of action to get to reach those goals. So that's what coaching is about. And then mentorship is about walking together with you as a kind of a guide and an example in order to get the things that you need to do done.
Who's your target market?
So my target market is leadership at all levels. And also I have some private clients who just need to get rid of difficult habits, or who are... Because I say this, if you don't face a difficult person and deal with it, you will come up against them again and again until you do deal with it. So I always tell people that, because I say that life is about that. We are given a bully in a workplace so that we learn how to deal with that, how to sort that sort of thing out. So there is very clearly that kind of person. I'm looking for people who are struggling with a particular thing or person or relationship in their lives, and we work at how to best fix that. But mainly we're looking at leaders who are perhaps technically competent but don't know how to manage a team, don't know how to get a good productivity out of a team. And Jeremy, I even do productivity improvement workshops with teams so that I can help them to see that they've got clear roles, clear boundaries, interaction is clear, and there are good systems in place.
Does everyone have leadership potential?
I believe that everybody has leadership potential, but some people are more natural leaders than others. So if you can learn the basics of leadership and the understanding that you have to put a structure and a discipline in place to be a good leader, all right, that's the first win. But if you are more of a people person, it's easier to be a leader. If you have empathy, it's easier to be a leader. But you have to be very careful, because empathy works as a good thing and a bad thing. Because people will use empathy to get you to blur the boundaries so that they can manipulate you.
There's the old cliche, isn't there? You can't manage something unless you can measure it.
Correct.
So how do you measure progress in your journey that you take people through?
We've got specific goals. And at certain intervals in the coaching process, we evaluate where we are, we evaluate how far we've come, we evaluate what's not working and what's working, and then we reset the goals or relook the goals to see that we make sure we reach what we need to reach.
It's all very well to talk about what you do and the approach and the theory, but who are you? What's your personal philosophy?
Well, my personal philosophy is, Jeremy, that we can do what we want to do, whatever we want to do. If we believe in ourselves and we set specific goals, we can achieve it. And people will say to me, but that's actually rubbish. But it's not rubbish, because if we are in the right position and we have the right qualifications, if it's a thing that requires qualifications, or we just have the right attitude, we are able to achieve what we need to achieve. And that is what coaching is about. Coaching is about learning to believe and trust in yourself in order to achieve the growth that you would like to achieve. Many people are frustrated, and I myself have helped many people to move past that frustration and to start to feel more comfortable with the balance. I say that happiness comes from the things that you do to achieve balance, to achieve a kind of like, I'd say, a comfort with your life. And coaching helps you to look at the areas which are uncomfortable and to change those. But my personal philosophy is be very aware of controlling your emotional situation, and be aware that also if you set goals and you work towards them, you can achieve what you need to achieve.
I've learned 3 important things from you. Okay. One is leaders need to listen. The second thing is not to be in a defensive position.
Absolutely.
And the third thing is about absolute and irrevocable commitment, not only to your process, but to the wider process of leadership.
Correct. So very importantly, I talk a lot about company leadership and I talk about people in a company setting, but these are not my only clients. These are my core focus. But what we teach in coaching, what we learn in coaching is applicable to any situation in our lives. Helps us to have better relationships with our children. It helps us to engage better with a society group that we're in. It helps us to make friends in a different manner. I even teach people how to get to introduce themselves to people and how to get a conversation going if they walk into a room and they need to start talking. So I help people to engage in all aspects of life, because the techniques and the behavior that is learned during coaching is applicable to their entire life.
And Stewart Rogers, I'm going to thank you for a fascinating conversation.